Hi, I'm Donna,
And I'm Will.
and this is Journey with Donna and Will. And today we're going to talk about land ownership and 40 acres and a mule. Before we get started with our ancestors' land ownership, we want to go through the timeline of 40 acres and a mule.
So on January 1st, 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation was issued by President Lincoln.
The federal government had acquired 400,000 acres of land along the Atlantic coast by South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida.
January 12th, 1865, Edwin Stanton, William Sherman, and 20 black religious leaders met in Savannah, Georgia.
So there were 20 ministers, and they selected Garrison Frazier to be the spokesman. And Garrison was asked 12 questions. We're going to go over two of the questions that were asked. Question number 3 was, state in what manner you think you can take care of yourself, and how can you best assist the government in maintaining your freedom?
Brother Frazier responded, the way we can best take care of ourselves is to have land and turn it and till it by our own labor. That is, by the labor of the women and children and old men, and we can soon maintain ourselves and have something to spare.
Number 4, the question was, state in what manner you would rather live, whether scattered among the whites or in colonies by yourselves.
And Brother Frazier replies, I would prefer to live by ourselves, where there is prejudice against us in the South that will take years to get over. 4 days later, after this historic meeting with the 20 black religious leaders, on January 16, 1865, General William Sherman issued Special Field Order Number 15, also known as 40 acres.
And Sherman appointed Brigadier General Rufus to divide up the land and give each family up to 40 acres. They also had some army mules that some of the families did receive. So there was an attempt at reparations for all the free labor that the African Americans had done for 200 years.
So what happened?
What happened? Let's take a look.
So on April 9th, 1865, the Civil War ended, Robert E. Lee and the Confederates surrendered.
So on April 14th and April 15th, President Lincoln was shot and killed.
Then Vice President Andrew Johnson became president.
In June of that year, 1865, 40,000 blacks have received the land, which was about 1% of the 4 million that were freed.
And sadly, in the fall of 1865, President Andrew Johnson overturned Special Field Order Number 15, returning all the land back to the Confederate farmers.
So the first promise of reparations was broken in less than a year. But fortunately, African Americans did not let that roadblock stop them from owning property. So some of our ancestors knew the importance of land ownership. So in 1877, my third great-grandfather, Leah Belton, purchased 336 acres of land for $1,176 from John Robertson, who was a white planter. In 1880, my second great-grandfather, Eli, also purchased 77 acres of land from John Robertson. And my grandmother, my third great-grandmother, Leah Robertson Belton, had 36 acres of land that she transferred to her young son, Zachary.
And in the late 1800s, my 2 times great-grandfather, Smith Reynolds, laid claim to property in Pulaski, Tennessee, now known as African Hollow. And he left his property to his children. Smith Reynolds had 5 sons. Among them was my great-grandfather, Mack Reynolds. The land over in African Hollow still exists, about 22.5 acres.
On my dad's side, Robert Day Jr. In 1893 started out by buying just 1/4 acre, and then he acquired or purchased 2 acres and eventually purchased 37.5 acres of land. And in 1903, my great-grandfather Frank J. Thomas purchased a lot of land for $35, and then 2 years later sold it for $214.
My 2 times great-grandmother, Hannah Conn, formerly enslaved, left property to one of her sons, James, who ultimately left property to my grandfather, Roy. And some of the property included livestock, pigs, steer, horses, furniture and the like, as well as a home and a wagon.
Land ownership and property was extremely important. Our ancestors who came before us knew the value of property. Kind of reminds me like when we met a young lady who was concerned how quickly her parents were getting rid of her grandfather's property. And she was like doing the research. You know, she was getting into the history of how hard it was to acquire these properties. She needed to educate her parents on it because they were just kind of giving away a lot of what her grandfather had put together very quickly, and I don't even think they were getting a good price for it.
Yeah, I admire that about that young lady. Anyway, I think it's important for each generation to educate their children about the importance of home ownership and property ownership, taking care of it because it represents wealth and legacy within your family.
Doing the research on how the Special Fields Order number 15 and how those black ministers saying what was needed kind of adds even another level of pride of how they worked to get their just due land. You know, even though it was taken away, people still persevered, got land because they understood the value of that.
Yeah, and back in the 1800s, land, just as it is today, is very valuable. It actually represented being able to sustain yourself. Mm-hmm. They were able to farm, raise livestock, fish in nearby creeks. So it was just their way of making a living, maintaining themselves and their family. As then, a very valuable asset, as it is today. Yeah, definitely hats off to our ancestors for the perseverance and diligence in acquiring land, maintaining it, and passing it down to their children.
Yeah, thanks to our ancestors who persevered even when land was supposed to be provided for them for all their labor. They still persevered. Alan Belton, Eli Belton, Leah Belton, Robert Day, and Frank J. Thomas,
Hannah Conn, Smith Reynolds, Mack Reynolds, Rachel Roy Conn.
So I'm Donna.
And I'm Will.
And this has been Journey with Donna and Will. Please comment below.
Like and subscribe.
And we will